There are places in this world that call to us. They sit on our bucket lists for years, gnawing at the back of our minds. Photos we've seen on Instagram, documentaries we've watched late at night. For me, it was one of the most famous national parks in the country. I won't name it, mostly because I don't want the National Park Service coming after me, but also because I don't want to ruin it for the 2 million visitors who flock there every year. Or maybe I should ruin it, because what happened to me out there is something the brochures don't mention. They talk about the majestic peaks, the crystal clear rivers, and the diverse wildlife. They don't talk about the things that happen in the dark. They don't tell you why people go missing. I thought the rumors were just campfire stories. I thought the local legends were designed to scare tourists into buying bear spray. But after what I saw on my second night, I realized that the scariest thing in the woods isn't a ghost or a killer. It's something much more biological. This is my story, and just a warning, it gets a little messy. I arrived at the park early on a Friday. The weather was perfect. That crisp, pine-scented air that fills your lungs and makes you feel like a new person. The park was busy, which usually makes me feel safer. Safety in numbers, right? I checked in at the ranger station, got my backcountry permit, and chatted up the ranger at the desk. He was an older guy, skin like leather, eyes that had seen too many winters. When I mentioned my route, a loop that would take me deep into the quieter sector of the park, he hesitated just for a second. "Be careful out there," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "We've had some activity lately." "Bears?" I asked. He shook his head, looking down at his paperwork. "Just keep your eyes open, and if you hear anything weird, don't investigate. Just stay in your tent." I brushed it off. Rangers are always overly cautious. It's their job. I hiked out, feeling the stress of my city life melting away with every mile. The first night was uneventful, just the wind in the trees and the distant hoot of an owl. It was paradise. Day 2, however, is when the isolation set in. I had hiked past the day trippers and the families with screaming kids. I was in the deep woods now. The trees were thicker here, ancient giants that blocked out most of the late afternoon sun. I set up camp in a small clearing near a dry creek bed. By 8 p.m., the sun was gone. The darkness in a national park is different than darkness anywhere else. It's heavy. It presses against you. I was sitting by my small fire, heating up some freeze-dried chili, when I heard it. At first, it was faint, a low rhythmic grunting. Ugh, ugh. My spoon froze halfway to my mouth. My first thought was a bear. Bears grunt, right? But this sounded human, or at least primate. It sounded like a large man struggling to lift a heavy weight. I sat perfectly still, straining my ears. The sound was coming from down the trail, maybe 50 yards away, hidden by the dense brush. Hern. It was getting louder and more aggressive. The ranger's warning flashed in my mind. Don't investigate. But curiosity is a fatal flaw of mine. I couldn't just sit there. What if it was a hiker in trouble? What if someone had fallen and was hurt? I couldn't live with myself if I sat here eating chili while someone was dying 50 yards away. I grabbed my flashlight, a heavy-duty tactical one that could blind a pilot, and stood up. The leaves crunched under my boots, sounding like gunshots in the quiet night. I paused. The grunting stopped for a second, then resumed, even louder this time. U-U-G-G-G-A-H. Okay, that didn't sound like pain. That sounded like strain. I started walking down the trail, sweeping the beam of light back and forth. The shadows of the trees danced like skeletons. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around, zip up my tent, and hide in my sleeping bag. Then the smell hit me. It wasn't the musky scent of a bear or the rot of a dead animal. It was sharp, acidic, and overwhelmingly foul. It smelled like a sewage treatment plant had exploded inside a hot dumpster. It was the kind of smell you can taste on the back of your tongue. I gagged, pulling my shirt up over my nose. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. "Is anyone out there?" No answer, just the grunting. And now a new sound, a wet, splashing sound. Plop, splat. I moved forward, fighting the urge to vomit. I shone my light out on the ground and froze. Along the trail, there were piles, massive steaming piles. This wasn't deer scat or rabbit pellets. These were mounds, huge and ungodly. I stepped around them, my boots slipping slightly in the mud. The source of the noise was just ahead, behind a massive cluster of boulders. I took a deep breath, gripped my flashlight like a weapon, and rounded the corner. I don't know what I expected to see. A murderer burying a body, a bear tearing apart a carcass, a ghost. I swung the light up, illuminating the clearing behind the rocks. There, squatting in the center of the clearing, was a figure. It was massive, easily 8 feet tall, if it stood up, covered in thick, matted dark brown hair. Its shoulders were as wide as a refrigerator. It was a Sasquatch, the legendary Bigfoot. The creature hunters spend their whole lives looking for, the myth, the monster, and it was taking a dump. I stood there, paralyzed, my brain unable to process the image. The majestic beast of the wild, the king of the forest, was hunched over, elbows on its knees, straining with a look of pure concentration on its hairy face. It hadn't seen me yet. The light was hitting it from the side. I watched, horrified and mesmerized, as the creature let out a long, relieved sigh that vibrated in my chest. Oh God, I thought, this is how I die. Watching Bigfoot relieve himself, the smell was catastrophic. My eyes were watering. I needed to leave. I needed to back away, go to my tent, pack up, and run until I hit civilization. I took one step back, moving as slowly as possible. Snap! The sound of the dry branch breaking under my heel was louder than the grunts. It cut through the night like a thunderclap. The Sasquatch froze. Slowly, terrifyingly, it turned its massive head toward me. Its eyes reflected the beam of my flashlight, glowing amber orbs, set deep in a primitive, hairy face. We locked eyes. For a second, there was just silence. Me, the intruder with the flashlight. Him, the cryptid in a very compromising position. I saw a flash of emotion in its eyes. Was it rage? Hunger? No, it was embarrassment. And then indignation. The creature roared, a sound so loud it felt like it shook the leaves off the trees, and started to stand up, realizing mid-motion that it wasn't finished. That broke my paralysis. Sorry, I screamed instinctively, as if I'd walked in on a roommate in the bathroom. I spun around and bolted. Panic took over. I wasn't hiking anymore. I was sprinting blindly through the dark. Behind me, I heard the heavy, thumping footsteps of the creature giving chase, crashing through the brush like a bulldozer. I was running so fast, I could barely control my legs. I saw the piles of evidence on the trail ahead of me, the landmines I had discovered earlier. I tried to hurdle one, but my foot slipped on a wet patch of moss. I flailed, arms windmilling, screaming as I nearly face planted right into a mound of Sasquatch waste. I managed to catch myself on a tree trunk, getting sap all over my hands, and scrambled back to my feet. I didn't look back. I didn't care about my tent. I didn't care about my freeze-dried chili. I ran all the way back to the main trail, my lungs burning, my legs screaming. I didn't stop until I saw the lights of the ranger station miles away. I burst into the station the next morning, disheveled, covered in sweat and dirt, smelling like sulfur and fear. The same old ranger was at the desk. Bigfoot, I wheezed, slamming my hands on the counter. I saw Bigfoot, Sector 4, near the dry creek. The ranger didn't even look up from his coffee. Did you now? Yes, he was. I couldn't bring myself to say it. He was huge. You have to close the park. There's a monster out there. The ranger looked at me, then sniffed the air. He grimaced. Son, looks to me like you had a rough night. Maybe you ate some bad berries. I know what I saw, I insisted, and I know what I smelled. He just shook his head and went back to his paperwork. We'll look into it. Safe travels home. They didn't look into it. I checked the news for weeks. No reports of Sasquatch, no closures, nothing. They probably thought I was just another crazy tourist who got spooked by a moose. But I know the truth. I know what's out there in the woods. I'm never setting foot in a national park again, not because I'm afraid of being eaten, not because I'm afraid of ghosts, but because some things are just better left unseen. And if you're ever in the deep woods and you hear a strange grunting sound in the dark, do yourself a favor. Don't investigate. Just let the man or the beast have his privacy.